Why are people still watching zombie movies? This subgenre of horror has been part of pop culture for decades, with hundreds of films about the dead coming back to life. So why are we still hungry for more? I asked my Instagram followers what they thought of zombie movies. Of about 100 responses, 81% liked them, but only 45% thought they were scary. But zombie movies are meant to be horror, so if they're not so scary anymore, why are they still so popular? To answer that question, we need to look at the history of the zombie genre. So, grab your shotgun and get ready for... White Zombie, directed by Victor Halperin and released in 1932, is considered to be the first ever zombie movie. Rejected by the woman he loves, a young man enlists the zombie master of Haiti, played by Dracula himself Bela Lugosi, to kill and possess her corpse using dark voodoo magic. When I watched this movie, I couldn't help but wonder, where are the flesh-eating monsters? Why aren't they biting people? Why do his eyebrows look like that? Before the 1960s, zombies were very different from what we know them as today. They originally come from the Haitian Vodou religion that developed in the 17th and 18th centuries during the Atlantic slave trade. Zombies were thought of as dead bodies reanimated by a sorcerer and forced into perpetual servitude, which represented an extension of the suffering they experienced living as slaves. After invading Haiti in 1915, Americans were fascinated by Vodou, or voodoo as they called it, and the concept of zombies. White Zombie portrays Haitian culture as primitive and savage, and their religious beliefs as evil inflicted on the white visitors. Another interpretation is that the predominantly white zombies reflect how colonizers are made monstrous through their actions, suggesting that the real evil in Haiti is the civilized whites. The filmmakers probably didn't intend to critique colonialism though, because they still had lines like this.
Surely you don't think she's alive? In the hands of natives? Oh no, better dead than that.
Yikes. Jacques Tourneur's 1943 film I Walked with a Zombie seems a bit more deliberate in its criticism, examining how colonialism has brought death to the people of the Caribbean island of Saint Sebastian. Black characters try to educate the protagonist about their history and Haitian rituals, and the figurehead of a slave ship with arrows protruding from it serves as a haunting reminder of the island's colonial past. While the story is still told mostly through white characters, its critique of colonialism is much more poignant. Following the end of the colonial era, voodoo zombie films faded from popularity, but you can still see their influence today in films like Jordan Peele's Get Out. The popularity of zombie films drastically increased after George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead in 1968. While not the first to do so, Romero's ghouls, which he would eventually call zombies, were completely removed from their Afro-Caribbean voodoo origins, instead being reanimated by radiation and infecting others through contact. What was new, however, was that these zombies had the munchies for human flesh. Focusing on a group of survivors hiding in an abandoned house surrounded by ghouls, Night of the Living Dead shows how even at the end of the world, we are still fighting about our own selfish agendas, ultimately leading to our demise. It was also the first horror film with a black lead, starring Dwayne Jones as Ben. The sole survivor of the night, Ben is mistaken for a ghoul by the police and shot dead. The film's release coincided with the assassination of Martin Luther King, making Ben's death a political statement. In place of colonialism, Romero criticized late-stage capitalism. Zombies now represented our insatiable desire to consume until there is nothing left. Cannibalism as the image of society feeding on itself. This is particularly prevalent in Romero's 1978 sequel, Dawn of the Dead. Hiding in a shopping mall, the survivors are unable to resist the pull of consumerism, becoming metaphorical zombies as they devour everything in sight. I would never be so susceptible to capitalism, right? The film was remade by film bro cult leader Zack Snyder in 2004.
And I think Zack's a pretty good filmmaker, and I loved the first 20 minutes of that film, but then, I don't know, it became a video game or something.
Zombie films in the 80s and 90s were pretty lacking in social commentary, with films like The Evil Dead and Brain Dead prioritizing over-the-top special effects and comedy. However, zombies would find a way to evolve. Danny Boyle's 2002 film 28 Days Later popularized a much more terrifying version of the zombie, the British. A man-made virus turns most of Great Britain into monsters that kill mindlessly out of pure rage, only slightly worse than the average British person. The infected turn in seconds, move a lot faster, and are much more violent. They're a lot scarier than the slower variety. I mean, look at them. If Romero's zombies were the consumers, Boyle's infected are the consumed. Instead of eating their victims, their only goal is to destroy, reflecting how rage has become our natural state living under capitalism. However, I think 28 Days Later is more of a criticism of human nature than it is of capitalism. Boyle aimed to comment on the overwhelming presence of social intolerance, drawing inspiration from fears about the spread of Ebola and rabies. A general fear of the other and the plausibility of being eviscerated by our own violent tendencies hits very close to home.
The monsters arose, really.
In the climax of the film, Jim succumbs to his rage to defeat the men holding his companions hostage, becoming so primal, so violent, that Selena thinks he is infected. There's something very confronting about losing our humanity, even without becoming a zombie. Edgar Wright's 2004 film Shaun of the Dead, a parody of 70s zombie movies, is considered to be the first zom rom-com. The opening is a perfect criticism of modern society. Everyone behaves like zombies even before the apocalypse begins, which is why Shaun doesn't notice when people actually start becoming the undead. It's also a story about dead relationships and how we need to choose between making change and letting go. Jonathan Levine's 2013 film Warm Bodies might be my favourite zombie movie. It follows a zombie who falls in love with a human and learns to rediscover his humanity. A surprisingly touching story about our ability to change from the worst states. Both Warm Bodies and Shaun of the Dead approach themes of humanity and connection in unique and meaningful ways. Which brings me to Ruben Fleischer's 2009 film Zombieland, which dares to ask the question, isn't killing zombies cool? It never goes very deep into the few good ideas it does have about found family and America's weird obsession with guns and violence. I get that it's an action comedy first and foremost, but wouldn't it be nice if there was a little bit of substance with it too? Also, the romance plot in this film is so forced and underdeveloped, it's honestly more gross than the zombies. Of all the films I watched, the only one I thought was scary was James Gunn's 2006 sci-fi horror comedy Slither. The alien parasite doesn't function like your typical zombie virus, so it's way less predictable and much more suspenseful. Like, what is even going on here? It's disgusting. It's so different to every other zombie movie that it gets a pass for being somewhat lacking in social commentary. I think I also found it scary because I was worried that something bad was going to happen to Nathan Fillion, my beloved. He's just so handsome and oh my god, Nathan, look out! It's okay, he's fine. I think the reason zombies aren't as scary anymore is because we're desensitized to them. We've seen so many films, and there's so much death in the media that the shock value is just gone. Every decade or two, the zombie has to reinvent itself to stay scary, which is why there are so many comedies now. If I wanted to make a scary zombie movie, I would have to completely reinvent how they work. But why do we keep watching? It's clear that people still love these films, with more recent titles like Train to Busan, #Alive, and Army of the Dead receiving massive viewership. I think it's because the good ones have something interesting to say about the world we live in, and about what makes us human. They've always been political. Whether it's critiquing colonialism, capitalism, or just human nature, zombies are a tool for social commentary. This is something I'll keep in mind in my own work. Regardless of genre, having something to say about who we are makes a story resonate. Then again, Zombieland made $100 million, so maybe all you need is cool-looking violence. God bless America.